where we have adjusted the competition to make it more suitable for high school teams. We had 9 teams this year. So this competition is run by having the robots perform standard test methods as developed by NIST, so the same ones in major rescue, gathering points for demonstrating capabilities, and bear in mind these are capabilities that are poorly performed by robots available to bomb squads and other responders right now. And then based on that, in the finals, we put it all together into an arena and then run around collecting points going over these test methods sequentially. So these students have been developing technologies that fill real-world gaps in capabilities.
You guys might have noticed that we actually had the local NSW bomb squad over. They had their robots playing around. They were playing on the big side a little bit because they didn't have any little robots. And honestly, they were coming over, looking at our teams and going, "Huh, that would be useful, that'd be useful. Be able to put that one through an air duct, be able to throw that one on a roof and have it run around and be able to inspect something where possibly you wouldn't be able to get a drone or you wouldn't be able to get one of the big robots."
By the way, I should also introduce Archer Losley, who actually ran the competition because I was busy running around picking the local chair. So I'd like to introduce, in no particular order except for proximity to me, we have s.a.r.t, we have King's Legacy, and we have Blue Storm. So I guess I'll hand it over to them to talk to you a bit about the experience of competing in RMRC as high school teams.
So we're the semi-autonomous rescue team, or s.a.r.t for short, and so we've been competing in this competition since its inception 2015. Yes, this was our robot from Canada last year. This is the Mark III, and this is our robot from this year, which is a bit of a prototype, big change from this one that we used this year, which did well but had its issues. We compete in the Rapidly Manufactured Rescue Challenge, which represents this sort of like bridge between junior and major. And so one of the things we did this year was actually take some of the inspiration from the Major League robots and take it down into the much smaller form factor. So things like the arm, some advancements in mapping, like we have a LiDAR sensor up here. And we essentially trying to make something that's capable like major ones, but smaller, cost effective, and easy to manufacture.
To give you some idea of the terrain. This was actually from Leipzig.
So that's actually the finals. While we're doing a regular competition, each lane will be completely separate, and there's a variety of flavors that you can choose from. There they all lined up, and for the finals, the teams this year and last year actually assembled how they wanted the maze to deal with all of your different challenges. So it meant that we had a lot of input from our young folk. And honestly, I like that aspect of it because it means that I'm not the one making the difficulty. They get to make the difficulty.
And one important thing about this competition, obviously it's supposed to bridge the gap between junior and major to help the sort of later year high school students and early year university students sort of come between major rescue and junior rescue. But the other really important thing about this competition is it's all open source. So the website that we have up here with all these photos is the Open Academic Robot Kit, which Raymond generated a few years ago as a base platform to start students working. And as a major part of the competition, all of the teams actually have to submit regular updates about their robots and technical documents so that any other team can actually start from scratch and get involved. So some of the teams have blogs or websites. I can pull up the s.a.r.t website as an example. And that sort of goes through information about the different generations of our robots, and it's got regular blog posts that sort of update people with the trials and tribulations the team have come up with and how they've sort of solved them, and also provides all of the open source information on our 3D printed files, any of our laser cutting or CNC parts, and also all of our code through GitHub as well. So it's a really, really good platform for students to come in with very little information, start on a base platform and then develop a whole range of different robots based on what capability they want to focus on most.
Actually, one of the changes this year is we require, so entry qualification into this competition is by team description paper, just like in a major competition. This year we also required all teams 2 weeks before the competition to submit an updated team description paper, which we then scored based on how useful it was in giving information to another team to replicate an innovation that they had. And this score was used as a multiplier in their preliminaries. So actually generating this technical documentation was part of the competition. Okay,
how about we take a break from the Aussies? Let's have the Americans.
Yeah, okay, let's have the Americans. Yeah.
Not that I would ever advocate for the Americans.
So I'm Lieber. I'm part of Blue Storm from America, of course. And this is our robot. the whole premise behind our robot is a few years back, we had a team that created something like this, and I actually believe they got the idea from s.a.r.t, and we just kind of jumped off of there. So what happens is the robot can be thrown onto a roof into a duct, and it can land in any orientation, and it can drive the same way, upside down, with over, any orientation that you can think of. So that way, if you're going down rubble or anything of that sort in a disaster zone, where you're trying to find victims, and there's, say, a ledge, and your robot falls off of it, you're not going to get stuck upside down. You can keep going because time is of the essence. And that's the big premise behind our robot. And the second part is reliability. So in that kind of disaster zone, you can't be like, oh, your robot's broken, let's go get a new one and come back. Because again, time is of the essence. People are stuck under rubble, and you have to get there with your sensors to check if they're okay. As you can see, the robot's rather flat along the top and bottom. So to get an arm in there with all the circuitry and sensors, like a speaker, CO2 sensor, power control unit, several motors, a large battery, was rather hard. So the arm can extend out just about this far. It has actually a small camera on the front, so you can see if your robot's on a ledge, it can look down the ledge without actually falling off to see if there's anything down there, or inspect inside of a pipe for cracks or any kind of damage to any other parts. So yeah, that was a big innovation for our team this year, and we're going to keep working to actually make grippers so you can turn valves and nozzles and do any other kind of dexterity task that you would need to do.
And just, of course, you also pioneered the Throwable robot challenge last year.
Yes, the Throwable robot. We had some
robot.
fun throwing the robot or dropping the robot off high ledges and cliffs to prove that it was, in fact, reliable.
So, King's Legacy?
So I guess while they're setting up our competition robots, I'll talk a bit about our entry level, we call them battle bots. And what this does is we're a school-based club from Perth. And the way we work is when you join the club, you get given all these designs and you sort of have to build the robot yourself. You have to laser cut all the parts, assemble it, and you get given some base codes that I believe you have to expand upon. Yeah, and you also are encouraged to design your own wheels, but these are the base design you get given, and this is basically just to, I guess, lower the entry level so people don't have to immediately start working on our competition robot.
But it has some things in common with the competition robot in that there's a Raspberry Pi there, there's a webcam on the front of it. We found that younger students coming into the club, there was just such a big step up to what the boys that are preparing for competition were doing, that it was a barrier. So we created this and a startup document so that boys that were interested could come in and start with something that was relatively simple. And the idea being also that once they got the simple things happening, started using it in the terrain, which would be motivating, and they would then start tinkering with the code, and then start tinkering with the CAD/CAM a little bit. What can I add to this? What can I add to this robot? And then be drawn into the task through a motivating activity, which is actually using it.
Actually, one thing I do want to add is part of this competition is a huge learning curve for young students that come from the EV3s and stuff like that, is that robots break and they don't always work correctly. And you can see them laughing because we actually had graveyard pictures at the end where we put the robots in this little box and then you surrounded it with all the parts that broke throughout the competition. And it's amazing because you see these teams come in, they have these awesome robots, and then they go through a course and half of it breaks. And then instead of just being like, well, we're done, they go right back to the table, they get to work. Designing robots like this, to actually get it to be able to drop and not break, I went through several designs where you have to wait a couple days to print a body, and every time it just broke and broke and broke until I finally found the actual issue where stress builds up and I was able to fix it, which is, I think, an amazing part of this competition as a transition between juniors and majors.
And that's something that when the bomb squad was taking a walk around and looking and seeing what was happening, they were fascinated at the amount of changes and just instantaneous, what do we need to do, what do we need to be able to fix? That's the kind of thing that out in the field, they have to do. This is a real life situation where all of a sudden, they're in a disaster, there's a cable broken, they don't know where it is, so they have to know enough of the innards to know what's most likely to break, how to fix it fast and cheap enough that they can afford to fix it while they're out there. And it's not always duct tape or milk cartons, but sometimes it is.
We bring in our robot, and we had several problems. So I guess as you can see, the wheels, the inside actually came off. We had to get a bit DIY, and we ended up cutting a milk carton into several pieces, gluing them together, and then gluing it in, which actually is a lot stronger than our original method of just having a bunch of spokes on the inside, as you can see in here. I guess the amount we've changed since we've come here and the amount we've learned from this competition is just extraordinary. And we've had several changes. We've had to make up an entire new pad and tilt system while here. There's a lot of stuff recently being put onto the arm. We've stuck bits of metal on here to stop it getting caught. All sorts of new things that we've just learned. And you can only really learn those from driving the robot around for hours every day at competition.
So that's actually one of the things that's nice about this competition. Now, this competition is still evolving. It's still very new. And it's kind of a balance between some very disparate concepts. So we're still just trying to strike that balance. For example, on the one hand, we want to try and push the envelope, so that means an awful lot of changes. We have rules discussions before every day, because things change. We find issues with the tests. We need to figure out how to best adapt them. We want to figure out how we can push the envelope forward. But we also want to have a set of base rules so people know what they're getting into. So we're still trying to strike that balance. We want to have these robots with a fixed configuration because we want to test their abilities through time, but we also want to allow the students to improve things when they see them, things like that. So do you have any comments about about that kind of balance?
Yeah. It's been on my mind for probably a year or two now, but I had sort of felt that perhaps our evolution of the designs wasn't quite ready for it, but very much when I get back home, I'm going to make contact with the local police and fire and rescue guys, one of those organisations that's interested in looking at what we're doing and giving us some feedback about what's useful to them. For instance, in an informal conversation earlier with the rescue guys that were here helping put the terrain together for Major, we were asking, what would be interesting to you guys, and they said, something that can open a Ziploc bag. Because they have to spend an awful lot of time and resources when someone leaves a Ziploc bag with some milk powder in it at the railway station or at the the lay-down area in the shopping centre or something like that, and it has to be treated as if it's something that's a threat, and yet it's just a simple thing. So yeah, we're quite interested in making contact with the local emergency services just to see how what we're doing lines up with what they're in, and perhaps take some lead from them about where we might go with our next, because we're ready for another redesign of the chassis.
And that's a similar sort of model that s.a.r.t took in their development this year as well. So you can see the dramatic change from our robot last year that's very similar to the American robot being flippable to the robot this year that's got the arm on it, it's got all the telemetry and everything mounted on top of the arm. And that was developed through discussion with emergency services where we were looking a little bit more about what they needed. So for example, this current iteration is not quite capable of it because the motors aren't quite strong enough to lift the robot, but this robot is capable of opening a door by itself. Which when we talk to our local ACT police and fire in the ACT, we're just incredibly excited to have a confined space robot with that sort of capability, because it just gives an extra level of safety to those emergency services personnel that they can do something autonomously before they have to go in themselves. So that's the sort of direction that s.a.r.t is taking their robots now as well, is looking beyond the competition and actually looking at applications in the field to help emergency services personnel.
And opening doors is such a huge challenge. We actually recently had an incident at Dulles Airport, which is a big airport in Washington, D.C., where there was a truck. Nobody was there. We didn't know what was inside of it. It's one of those big box fans. So bomb robot came out to inspect it. There's no windows. So they needed to open up the door. So what happened? A guy with a family had to get into a bomb suit and physically walk up to it and open up the door so the robot could inspect it. So the robot that's meant to be there, where if it went boom, the robot explodes, oh well, we lost some money, but everybody's safe. And instead we had to put a human in line in order to be able to do the very first job that that robot had to be capable of doing. So this is the kind of thing where if these guys, if high school students can design and implement a robot that can open up doors that we can then hand to first responders and say, okay, your big robot that cost you $250,000 couldn't do it. Here's one that you can build yourself for $1,000, and if it opens the door and goes boom, oh well, print another one for $1,000. Who cares? You know, I am all for that. And to me, it gives me chills. My hair is standing on end. The fact that we could do this and we could actually get it worldwide is amazing. And I'm super excited by that possibility.
Actually, for those of you who didn't come to visit us, we actually had the New South Wales bomb squad with us for the entire week, as well as a couple of their newest robots on the stand. The New South Wales Police actually did all prep work for our arena over the last 3 months. They're taking the arena and using it not just for testing their robots, and this is a big arena, not just the mini arena, the big arena. They're using it to test not just their robots, but they're also going to be using it to test and train their personnel moving through it in bomb suits. Can they inspect everything the robots need to inspect? Can they open the doors? Can they go over the terrains and not trip over while wearing, how much is this, about what, 50, 40 kilos worth of armor? Anyway, we're getting close to our stretch time.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any more quick words to add before we open up to questions?
Yeah. Well, you can see that a lot of these designs are really quite different, and I quite enjoy that in this competition because there's no correct robot design. Different robots specialize in different things, and that allows them to get equal points throughout the competition. So I really enjoy that about the competition, that there's just such diversity throughout all the robots there.
And actually, I think we're getting the balance on the diversity fairly well. Because some of you may know that we had some extremely tight scoring in the placeholders. We had a very clear first place winner, but then kind of, it was fairly well matched across the next 4 teams. They all did well in different things. Yeah. And yet, the way the scores fell out, we couldn't split them in the end. So I think that's a good sign that such diverse robots, and yet we can balance that out.
That's one of the great things about the competition, where if everything's open source, everybody's got access to build upon. So if one team's good at one thing, another team is good at something else, they can take ideas from each other and improve upon their own robots to give it those capabilities.
I guess let's open up to a couple of questions before we get kicked out. Yes?
So I see that you have a lot of different designs, you use a lot of different machines like laser cutters, 3D printers, and so on. What would you recommend as kind of like a novice team starting out, knowing nothing about your league? What would you recommend as a design?
So I actually had a design put together a few years ago. It's a little dated now, so maybe these people have some suggestions. But basically, you mail order all of the laser cut parts for one of these robots. We have then a parts list of, you buy these servos, you buy these control boards, you buy these things. Here's how you wire it together. Here is the code to make it all work. That doesn't work anymore because the code is deprecated now. But I think the goal with having the TDM, the team description papers scored, is to start having the teams here generating that kind of material so that new teams can download the best, the winning team description papers, or the team description paper that describes the robot they're most interested in, and recreate that robot, and maybe even communicate with that team and said, hey, we're interested in recreating your robot. We've got your TDP. What are the details? Anyone?
And like for example, our TDM has all the print files, all the code, and even how we printed them and what settings we used to print them. So it's just as much for our team as it is for other teams, because if there's a new team coming in, they're like, hey, we like your robot design, we want to build upon it. I'll hand them the team description paper, and from scratch, I label out how to modify any parts that we modified, how to solder anything that we've done. From scratch, every nut and bolt is on that TDM, and you can build that robot from scratch.
Is that all on the website?
Most of the teams posted it to the mailing list, which is a Google group, so the history is available. I am planning on putting all of the TDPs, we'll be putting all of that on the website. It's conf.oarkit.org.
With reference to your question, I reckon a really good place to start is with a robot along these lines. Yeah. It's just a more robust format. So it gets you through a lot of the terrain, which I think is very motivating. It's good for the confidence of the team. So feel like they're getting somewhere. And then what happens is they start turning up at dexterity fields and sensor fields, and they're going, oh, geez, it'd be good if we could read a QR code. Oh, it would be good if we could sense this or sense that or touch that keyboard. And that they're a really good, robust starting point.
The goal is rapidly manufactured, so that is using machines available in most either high schools or hackerspaces or via mail order services. So we focus on 3D printing, laser cutting, and the low-end CNC milled parts. So we actually highly encourage junior teams, especially junior maize, I think, is the one that's closest to this. If you want to make a bit of a transition to something that has some different terrain, some more sensor challenges, and is also a transition into the majors, I highly recommend checking this out. It should be familiar and yet different. Any more questions?
What does TDM stand for?
Team description material. So in majors, there's a team description paper, like a research paper that teams write for qualification. For this competition, I wanted to expand it out to say that if you have the same material in a series of blog posts or YouTube videos or podcasts or whatever the case may be, that we're going to open up the format, as long as it's a format that is accessible to teams with not too much of a technical background and that we can archive. Those were basically the two criteria we had. Oh, and also, of course, answers all the questions that we expect. Yes.
Well, and also, there's with the mailing list, there's emails that are constantly coming out. If a new group was trying to get started and they have technical obstacle, then once they're on the mailing list, they send out it just becomes like a forum that we're having trouble getting our Raspberry Pi to talk to whatever, and then someone will pick it up and offer you something useful. We've got all of the teams have got vast repositories of CNC files and code, GitHub, and so forth. So it's a very it's quite a well-connected community.
And one thing about that is we also very much encourage the teams to get involved in generating the rules for the next challenge. Because, of course, we try and push the envelope, which means that we need to adapt the rules as things change. So that's also a venue where we can discuss and say, okay, we're planning on doing this kind of challenge, and here are the tests we're planning on doing. What do you think? Try to build them. Tell us whether you think it's good or bad. And we try to have an open discussion about how things will run. So, so if you like that kind of thing, where you can have these things evolving a bit, please join us in that too. Time for another question.
Who's the best person for contact?
So the mailing list, list.oarkit.org, it takes you to this forum, which has a whole bunch of resources. So if you have any questions, I suggest that's the first place to look, and to post your questions, and someone will get back to you, be it a team or be it one of us or one of us on the committee. Okay. Thank you.